Welcome everybody, Steve. We're coming at you with another episode of Author Spotlight. Today with Michael Greaney. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Yes. Of the book, I'm sorry?
I said I am pleased.
Me too. Hashtag me too. Author of the book, 10 Battles Every Catholic Should Know. Michael, welcome to the program. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, it's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Hey, no problem. No. I'm glad you responded back. So tell me, why'd you write a book on 10 battles and why just 10?
Well, 10 seemed to be the amount I could get together. Yeah. In fact, I actually had to, a dozen would have been better for the number of chapters, but you notice that the stories of the Siege of Malta and the Battle of Lepanto were so involved and so long that I cut them in, each one into 2 chapters. So I got the requisite dozen I wanted. But as you say, how did I come to write it? Well, it was a very, very long process. Quite some time ago, I was writing articles for Military History and Military Heritage magazine. And at the same time, John Morehouse, who is now at TAN, was editor and publisher of the Catholic Men's Quarterly. It was a pretty good magazine, but it didn't seem to catch on the way it really should have, in my opinion. Probably because I think that print magazines were kind of getting on the way out at that point. It had done better with a website, but not as good for me. And he was... had seen some of my earlier articles on other subjects in a hobby magazine, World Coin News, that had gone into the history of Irish coinage during the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, which actually got me an award. I was, best series for article or best series of articles on world coinage for the medieval period. I mean, that's rather specialized, but he had liked them. And so he said, do you have anything, for the magazine on battles in which, Catholics took part? And I actually did have about half a dozen that I had worked up in various stages for military heritage and military history. But even though the editors liked them, it was soon after 9/11, and they thought that it would, inspire rage or hatred or something against Muslims. Which was not my intention in writing them. I was just trying to write history. And so I told John, I said, well, take a look at these and see if you like them. And he liked them and published them. After a while, though, the magazine folded. But when he came back from, I think he was in Chile for a while. But anyway, when he came back, he started with TAN. And then we got back in contact. And he said, you remember those articles you used to write for Catholic Men's Quarterly? I said, well, they're hard to forget. They were so well written. And he said, have you ever thought about turning them into a book? I've been, following your stuff for quite a while. And, we'd like to have some of your thoughts on Catholic social teaching and on history. But what I'm really interested in right now is something on, military history. And so I started collecting what I had. And then when I got about halfway through, I realized, I've got something of a theme here. Because, most people, when they're talking about, the various crusades, scatter them all over the map. And they take the popular battles, if that's not an oxymoron. And so you get the stuff that was going on in Spain and in the Holy Land and other places. But no one seems to concentrate on what was going on in Central Europe. And so I thought, well, why don't I tie that together? So I dug up an article I had begun some time ago on the Battle of Manzikert, which is when the whole interaction with the Turks started. And then finished one that I had on the real Dracula. And then finished off one that I had on Hochim. I think that's the way to pronounce it. Apparently there's a million different ways to spell it.
Don't ask me.
And a million and a half ways to pronounce it. And so then I also, by strange chance, found some, a firsthand account of the Siege of Nicosia in 1570, which I had not found when I first tried to write the article. So with all of that, I managed to get enough to put a whole book together. And then I used the sidebars that you compose for, see, Military Heritage and Military History magazine have a specific format. And they like to have, for every article, 2 sidebars that give interesting, facts about things related to the battle that are not necessarily part of the battle. Sort of give a historical perspective. So with that, those are the historical notes at the end of every chapter, if you saw them.
Okay. Yeah.
Like the Rosary after the Battle of Lepanto, and I think the earthworks after the Siege of Vienna is where I put those. Those were originally intended as sidebars to magazine articles.
Understood.
And so once we finished that, then I submitted it to John, and he liked it, so it got published eventually.
Yeah, when I opened up the chapters, you mentioned the first battle, which I've already forgotten how to pronounce.
Manzikert.
Yeah, I'm going.
Just say the dreadful day, which is the way the Orthodox remember it.
Yeah, I do remember that part, the dreadful day. I'm going, well, yeah, where do you find this one at?
It wasn't easy. I tracked down, I found references to it in Julian Norwich's fantastic history. The big 3-volume thing, if you know anything about Byzantine history. And then from a few authors whose names I can't pronounce. There's no such thing as a small book on Byzantine history.
That's true.
And then I found references to a very rare book about the dreadful day and managed to track down a copy after a couple of years, which enabled me to finish the book. The Manzikert is so pivotal to Orthodox history and to overall Christian history and the history of the Crusades, but there was very little written on it.
Can you?
But I managed to track down one of the few dedicated books on it.
Can you give not to give it all away? Can you give a teaser about that?
Well, interestingly, the battle need never have occurred, and frankly, after it was lost, it need not have resulted in a defeat. It's very strange, but it all had to do with the bureaucratic party back in Constantinople and the Popular Party and the military party. The bureaucracy wanted to weaken the military because they figured that would keep them on top. Unfortunately, with the rise of Islam and everybody else come charging in to take part as much as the Byzantine Empire as they could possibly grab, weakening the military was not a smart move, as you might imagine. So weakening the military and having betrayal in the ranks during the battle didn't help. But even then, something could have been salvaged, except the bureaucratic party managed to sabotage that too. The Byzantines lost not only the battle, but the war and the peace as well. I mean, the Poles talk about World War II as the war they lost twice. Well, the Battle of Manzikert was the war the Byzantines lost 3 times.
Yeah, talk about going home with your tail between your legs. What of all the battles you came up with, what were your, you get, obviously for people now, he has Vienna, Malta, Lepanto. By the way, everyone, that's the Lepanto flag back there. Also, I don't know if many people, you've probably seen this. Have you seen the banner? I put my logo in that one.
Okay, yes.
That's in Gaeta. The big that's for people who don't know, that's the gigantic main battle standard of Lepanto in Hoc Signo Vinces. We bombed it in World War II, or was it World War One? I think it was World War II. So we made the little additions of the whiteness on the back of it. Thanks, Alash.
Sharpies are for to fill in.
Yes. That thing's 20 feet tall. I asked a museum to give me a high definition one. They basically turned around the corner, went click, and then sent me a going, thanks guys.
Yeah.
So what was your probably favorite battle to write about?
I'd have to say Szigetvár. It was the siege of the castle of Szigetvár in 1566. I have trouble with dates, but I remember that one. And Count Miklos Zrinyi, another name I'm probably mispronouncing, so all the Croats and don't come after me.
But, say it with confidence, you know it.
See, the problem with the Crusades in Central and Eastern Europe is that the sources in English are so few and far between that it took so much research to find out. I even had trouble trying to find, the basic map of the city.
Wow!
But I did find it finally, as you'll see in the book. But just the guy's character really grabbed me for some reason. It was like, how many ways can I poke the Sultan in the eye? And how many ways can I get back at him? The battle started because the Sultan, Suleiman the Magnificent, was going to make one more try to take Vienna. Because if you could take Rome or Vienna, you had Europe. And Suleiman the Magnificent wanted to conquer Europe. So he assembled what may have been the largest military force he had been ever put together, and started out for Vienna by way of Budapest, because he already controlled Budapest. Well, along the way, Count Miklos Zrinyi decided to take a band of about 100 or so men and attack one of the columns under the command of a friend of Suleiman. Well, he killed him and made off with some loot. And basically, it should have been considered nothing more than an irritating annoyance by Suleiman, and said, forget that, we'll get him on the way back. Instead, he diverted the entire column to reduce the castle of Szigetvár and punish Miklos Zrinyi for his impudence in attacking a column of the Sultan while the Sultan was trying to go about important business of conquering Europe. He said, this will take only a couple of days. Well, it tied the Sultan down for 3 months. He died at the end of the siege himself, and his vizier Sakoli tried to keep the secret from getting out. So basically he had the embalmed Sultan stuck up on a throne to observe the battle.
So it's Weekend at Bernie's battle style.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. But that's basically what it was.
Just throwing his arms up.
You're not supposed to do that when I'm on camera. Okay. But anyway, they finally succeeded in, reducing the castle and killing everybody there. But by that time, it was 3 months too late even to think about making your way into Hungary, much less Vienna. So they went back with the Sultan's body to Istanbul, on the way undertaking a minor siege to convince people that the Sultan was still alive. The problem was that the Ottoman method of succession was that whoever got there firstest got it. And Sakoli's candidate was not a very good candidate, but he was someone whom Sakoli thought he could control. Where you had, the father was Suleiman the Magnificent, the son was Selim the Drunk. He was a raging alcoholic. So Sakoli had to keep Suleiman's death secret as long as he possibly could to put his candidate in solid before anybody else got there. Politics as usual, you know.
And then keep him away from the bottle so you don't rat his mouth out.
Or actually keep him on the bottle so that he can't become conscious.
So you got a dead guy up there and he's passed out, so we're good.
That's pretty much, you pretty much summed up the Ottoman leadership.
What's the plan? I don't know.
just go charge it in with as many people as you can get.
Yeah. You guys go that way, you guys go that way, don't screw anything up. Good luck. I'll not be with you. So what do you want readers to get out of this? Obviously to know history a little bit more, but I'm sure there's other things like be wild, maybe dig more deeper into the Crusades in general.
Well, actually one of my primary reasons was to get more people to appreciate the role of Central and Eastern Europe in history. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that the center of activity in Europe was in Central Europe for centuries. Mm-hmm. England and France and even Italy were on the fringe. Mm-hmm. I mean, the great Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, of which most people know absolutely nothing, was one of the most powerful countries in the world for a couple of centuries. Mm-hmm. And the king was a constitutional monarch, believe it or not. He was elected. I'm going to mispronounce this name, but if you want some really good fictional accounts of it, the Polish-Lithuanian author Heinrich Sienkiewicz, I think that's how it's pronounced.
You're in the ballpark.
Corrected me on it. It didn't stick. If you read, most people know him for Quo Vadis, you know, the novel that was made into a movie. That the movie was okay, but it wasn't as good as the novel. The best translation, of course, is by an Irish folklorist, Jeremiah Curtin, and is the most popular one. But if you want the book that is most popular in Poland and in Lithuania, it's actually a trilogy. You know, it's called The Deluge. It's about, you know, what happened in Poland in the mid-17th century that brought down the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Mm-hmm. It is magnificent is a mild way of putting it. I have a personal theory that brings in Tolkien, that The Lord of the Rings, which Tolkien insisted was not a trilogy, mm-hmm. was based on With Fire and Sword, which is the first volume in Sienkiewicz's, however you pronounce it, pardon. All the Lithuanians and Poles, please don't come after me.
We're picking up what you're putting down.
But the first volume in that guy's trilogy, With Fire and Sword, mm-hmm. if you read it, this sounds an awful lot like Lord of the Rings. Huh. But that is a personal theory. Don't come after me by saying how dumb I am to have it. But as I said, most people have no comprehension or even understanding or knowledge of what was going on in that area. Mm-hmm. And of course, a secondary one is not to glorify war. Mm-hmm. I mean, I hope that the stories, you know, glorified the heroes there, mm-hmm. and the people whose efforts managed to carry through these things, but not the war itself. I mean, as I tried to make clear in the way I wrote some of them, and you know, the little notes, there was always an alternative to what happened.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. Speaking of another battle, it popped in my head because I'm looking at the Lepanto flag. But before it, Famagusta.
Oh, yeah. That was one of the epics of history that almost no one in the West knows about.
Yes.
And Bragadino, who was the civil governor, and who, unlike a lot of Venetian politicians, actually had some common sense and a sense of duty. Mm-hmm. They expected him, you know, Famagusta, which was an unimportant little town again, mm-hmm. To fall within a matter of days. It held out for almost a year. And at the end of the siege, I think they had maybe 2 or 3 barrels of gunpowder left. Mm-hmm. Of course, Venice had managed to resupply them occasionally by running the Turkish blockade, mm-hmm. but it still wasn't easy. I mean, the entire city was in ruins by the time the siege was over.
Yeah, there was a part of Lepanto was a battle cry of them yelling "Famagusta, Famagusta."
Oh yeah, because they found out a couple of days before Lepanto what had happened at Famagusta. Not to give a spoiler, but mm-hmm. there had been a negotiated surrender, and the Turkish commander violated the terms. To put it mildly.
Very mildly, yes.
Yeah, I tried not to give too many details, but you still need a strong stomach to read about it.
Yes, for sure. Well, Michael, I appreciate you coming on. This has been great. 20 minutes flew by in 2 seconds.
I survived.
You did? See? Well, it wasn't a battle.
No, very enjoyable.
Thank you very much. We'll put the link underneath in the show notes section. Everybody get 10 battles every Catholic should know, because every Catholic should know them, so every Catholic should buy the book. Michael, appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. It's great having you.
Thank you. Take care.